everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 651. Today we're going to take a look at a game that came out last year, Villainous, but also take a look at the first expansion, Wicked to the Core, that's just coming out about now. Now I somehow missed the boat on Villainous, or playing Villainous last year, so I had a chance to play some of the expansion characters and some of the characters in the main game. If you're not familiar with the game, basically each player gets a somewhat asymmetric villain from the Disney universes, and then you play them sort of against each other, and you'll be each of you are trying to complete like a different sort of quest or objective that you're trying to accomplish. Once somebody does that, they're instantly the winner, and then you're also able to trigger hero decks out of the other players' cards and kind of throw them at that player to kind of slow them down and thwart them a little bit. So we'll jump in. I'll show you a little bit of how to play, and I'll also kind of use a couple of the characters that I've had a chance to play with out of this box. So if you're familiar with Villainous, you'll get to see a little bit of that as well in the walkthrough. Then I'll come back and say what I think. So here I've set up two player boards, one for the Evil Queen and then one for Hades. These are two characters in the new expansion, two of the three characters. The other one is Dr. Facilier. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I've not seen the movie that character comes in. But these three characters that you get in the expansion are completely compatible with everything in the base game, and it gives you enough components to actually play just with the expansion. So if you want to just get the expansion for some reason, you can play standalone with that up to 3 players, whereas the full game will take you up to actually 6 players. It does give you enough of these power tokens to play with if you're just going to play a 3-player game. Now this little container here comes with the base game. But they do give you enough tokens there. They give you these lock tokens as well. And then there's also this token here, which is kind of a duplicate of the one that comes in the base game. If you're playing with 5 and 6 players, I believe, then this token will come into play. I'll talk about more of that in a minute. And then each player is going to get a pawn that kind of matches their character. These are kind of cool because they're plastic, but they look like they're glass, which is neat. And then you get kind of a main deck of cards that sort of matches your color with some symbols on the front or the back of the cards. And then each character also has a hero deck, which is you don't want to deal with because these are the good guys trying to thwart you, and they're all themed towards whatever character you're playing. Now, like I said in the intro, each character has a very specific win condition and objective that they're trying to complete. And they're different across all the different villains. And as soon as somebody wins or completes their objective, then the game is over and that player's won. Now, the gameplay is pretty straightforward and simple. Everybody's going to have a hand of 4 cards. You're always going to draw back up to 4 cards at the end of your turn. And these are the ways that you're actually going to win the game by playing and manipulating these cards. So what you do on your turn is you're going to take and move your pawn onto any available space that you wish. Everybody starts on the leftmost spot, and then you pick one of the spots and move there. And you can see there's iconography that show you the various actions you can do. Now, this particular character, the Evil Queen, this space is locked. You can tell by the lock icon there. Not all characters have a locked space, just some of them do. And always when you have a locked location, then part of your objective is going to get that unlocked and then probably complete something else. So you pick up your pawn, you move to a spot, and then you do the things that it tells you. So if we moved here, we can see we got 4 kind of actions that we can do. The first thing we can do is collect 2 power, and these are those tokens I showed you earlier. And then you can also activate a card, which I'll show you in a second. You can also discard cards and then also play a card. Now the reason you might discard cards is because, like I said, you draw up to 4 cards. Well, if you still have 4 cards in your hand at the end of your turn, you're not going to be drawing any new cards. And maybe you've got stuff in your hand that, it's not really important to you at this moment. So you might say, oh, I'll get rid of these 2 cards and then I can get 2 new fresh ones. And then maybe these will be more useful. As you go through the deck, if you go all the way through it, then you'll shuffle your discard pile back into a deck and keep drawing. So that's the discard action. Here's the play a card, and we'll just take a look at a sample card here. This one, for example, we would play this. This costs you 2 power, so maybe you move to this location, collected 2 power, which gives you enough now to actually play that card. So you would spend the power, put it back into the cauldron, and then go ahead and play that. And usually you can play this anywhere you want at these different locations. So maybe we'll just play it there. So now we've collected 2 power, maybe played a card and then discarded some cards. And then now we can activate any cards anywhere that's under our board there. And we know that because this icon here means it can be activated, which matches that icon there. So this says, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and discard the rest. So this is a pretty convenient turn. Maybe we collect 2 power, we play this card, we activate it, and then maybe we didn't really get anything we want, so we discard a couple of cards more and to give us maybe a better turn next time. And then the next player will take their action around the board, and then you'll move to another spot and take the actions there. Now there is not a ton of icons in the game. Players will get a player aid here, and this tells you kind of about the basic point of the objectives of all the villains in this particular deck. There's a similar card in the base game, and then on the backs of these is a reference for the iconography, and the iconography hasn't changed between the base game and the expansion, but we can take a look. So we've already talked about gaining power, playing cards, and activating cards, as well as discarding cards. So there's 4 other actions that we haven't talked about here. First is Fate. So let's talk about Fate. So the Fate decks are these 2 white back decks. So if I'm the Evil Queen player and I move to a spot that tells me to activate Fate with a lightning bolt, I'm going to choose a player and draw 2 cards off the top of their Fate deck, and then choose one to play on the top of their board up here. Now in a 5 and 6 player game, you can see this icon. If you're targeted by Fate, you'll take this and kind of put it next to your board, and so you cannot be targeted again by Fate until another player is, and then you'll pass them that token, and then you'll be open again for the pounding. So let's pretend the Evil Queen here was targeted by Fate, and then the Hades player decided, I'm going to choose Doc. And they're going to choose a location to put it. And again, they're going to put it on the top, and you can see what's going to happen is they're going to cover up some of the action spaces there. So next time that the queen moves here, she can only do these bottom 2 actions instead of all 4 actions until this card is removed. And in this case, it's a hero card, and we can look at a couple of things here. It says Evil Queen must defeat Doc before defeating other heroes. So this can be kind of a nuisance as well, because it's going to get in the way of her objective, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you can see they have sort of a strength of 3. So now the queen has to deal with that. Well, one of the other actions you can do that kind of counterparts Fate is Vanquish. So if you move to a spot that has the Vanquish action, and it doesn't matter where that Vanquish action is, then you can trigger your allies to fight the hero. Now in this particular case, because remember I said it was asymmetric, the Evil Queen does not have a whole lot of allies. She has this thing that she has called Poison, but she does have this ally here, the Huntsman. And you see heroes at Huntsman's location get -1 strength. So if the Doc was at this location and the Huntsman was down here, then this would be actually a 2 instead of a 3. And the Huntsman has the other cool ability of being able to move them around. So if you activate a card, you can then move him and plop him into a spot where he's going to be conveniently located. Now if you take the Vanquish action, you're going to take and kind of add up the strength here of all of your allies. And you can have as many cards as you want at these locations, and they're going to fight, and any allies that fight will discard, and then this hero will also get discarded. But then that again unlocks these for you to use, and then gets rid of any maybe other effects that are getting in your way. So that's Fate and Vanquish. And then these other 2 abilities here, move an item or ally, or move a hero, very simply allows you to move allies or items, or if heroes are up here on top, allows you to move them left or right there. And then there are particular characters, like let's look at Hades. Now Hades, for example, has these titans in here. It says Argus can only be deployed in the underworld, and I think all the titans in there can only be deployed in the underworld. And the objective to win is to start Hades' turn with 3 titans over here in Mount Olympus. So they're going to be deploying these. These are going to be walking around, smashing things. You can see this one has a lot of strength. And then you want to kind of move them. And then once they get 3 there, then Hades is going to win. Now the way that the Evil Queen wins is very interesting. It's a lot like Captain Hook, who is in the base game. And in the base game, Captain Hook has to defeat Peter Pan. In this game, the Evil Queen has to defeat Snow White. But like I said, she doesn't really have like a lot of allies. She has this poison ability where she can start to convert power tokens into poison, and then she uses the poison actually to fight some of these heroes instead of the allies. And then she's going to try and defeat Snow White over there. And she has cards that'll like sift through Snow White, because let's pretend that another player has triggered the Fate ability, and they look at Snow White and they're like, well, I'm not going to put Snow White in front of her because, you know, that's part of helping her win the game, so I might discard her. But she does have cards in her main deck that will allow her to fish her out. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. Okay, so that is Villainous with a little bit of a preview for the Wicked to the Core expansion. So let's go through our 3 pillars of reviews, and the first thing I want to talk about is playtime. In my experience, I've only played this with the 2 and the 3 players, and the games have been, once we kind of learn the game, it's about a half an hour to play. Especially, well, the first time you play it, it's, you know, you're kind of just learning the game as a whole, but then, you know, the next time you play, you might play a different villain, and then you're going to kind of like change up a little bit there. But they aren't so like drastically different that you're not going to get the gist of what to do, because when you move to a spot, it tells you the 4 things you can do, and usually you're going to collect some power play card and do stuff. So you're not, it's like so open-ended that you just have a lot of paralysis. You're like, well, if I move here, I can play this card, and I know my goal's in this ballpark, and then I'll draw some new cards. So the decision space per turn is pretty small, even though there's a larger overarching kind of goal across all the turns. But I would say, you know, once everybody's played it, certainly at that lower player count, then you're still going to be about the half-hour mark. Now, if you bumped it up into the 6-player count, I'm sure it would go longer. But that kind of dovetails into the second pillar, is the player count, and what do I think of that? Well, having played this a few times now at the lower player count, when I first played it, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I'd really want to play this with like 6 or something, because it would just take a while for the turn to get back to me. People would be struggling with what to do. There'd just be a lot to kind of figure out and take in. It's like, oh, Billy's getting close to his goal over there, you know, and this kind of stuff. And I got to watch everybody and see what's going on and figure out who to target with a Fate attack or something. But after I've played it a little bit more, I think I would actually like to try this with 6 players, as long as everybody at the table was really familiar with the game. Everybody had at least a pretty decent understanding of all of the different villains and so on. I think that you could probably maybe get up to an hour at 6 players, but I think if everybody was sort of on the same page, then I would be totally down to play this as a 6-player game. I have some more thoughts on that. But let's get to more of the fuzzy review stuff. The last thing I would talk about is, what is this like? And I don't really know what this is like. It's got some little pieces of everything. You've got a little sort of like a worker placement thing where you move your character and then you do some actions there, and you're converting resources to play cards and that kind of stuff. And, there's some hand management, kind of chucking away cards, getting new cards, trying to get them at the right time. And then there's a little bit of balancing act trying to do that to sort of combat the heroes that are invariably going to get in your way. And then, dealing with that and then trying to get back to your main goal, but then also paying attention to the other players to get in their way. But mechanically, this is a pretty unique game, I think. Each deck is completely unique from each other. The different villains, they're not all as different from the others as some others are from some others. Like I said, the Evil Queen is a lot like Captain Hook in the base game, but she's different enough because she doesn't have a lot of fighters and allies. She's building this poison bit. But the objective for her is to unlock the final location, go dig out Snow White, just like Captain Hook's trying to dig out Peter Pan. And then, he's trying to move Peter Pan, whereas she's trying to do the poison thing. So there's definitely a significant amount of variation, I would say, but it's not drastic. But yeah, so I really can't pin this down and say what it's like, because it feels like a lot of sort of filler card games, but there's just a little bit more going on in this. And it's got the Disney vibe happening, which is really neat. I like that. And, it's just cool having if you get attacked, somebody plays like a take that, and then you're like, oh, I'm throwing this hero at you. You're like, oh, that's neat, because it's like the dwarves attacking you, or, characters from Robin Hood if you're playing Prince John and all that kind of stuff. So you're like, oh, that's okay. I like those people, because I was rooting for them when I was 5 and watched that movie or whatever. So I don't hate you for attacking me. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But the one thing I would say that is sort of a caveat to this game, because I really do like this game, and it's not a caveat for me, but it smells like a caveat that maybe after I play this a dozen times or something, it might sort of wear on me. But I could see it 100% wearing on some other players, is a lot of times your goal is basically dig for the right card and get it and play it. So, it boils down to, I need to get these Titans out, and I don't have any Titans in my hand. And so, okay, I'm going to move the spot, discard my entire hand, draw 4 cards, and then whatever. So I'd say it's a small caveat, I would say, because there's definitely more to the game than that. It's just at certain times of the game, it can feel like I just need to dig for this card because I'm this close to winning. I need to get it. I need to, trigger through my fate deck or whatever. So a lot of times it just feels like, well, I'm just digging for the card and it's the luck. And Billy got the card just through the normal course of play as he was trying to accomplish his goal. Oh, he happened to get the card that he really needs to win as well. So it's already in his hand. So he's got a little bit of a leg up. So yeah, that's okay. I think for me, this game, the way it's kind of presented itself, it doesn't really matter that much because, like I said, it takes a half an hour and it's got the Disney sort of gloss of paint on there. So it shouldn't be super, I don't feel like I should be super uptight about the level of strategy versus luck in this game. And so, yeah, so there's that. The thing that I think kind of balances that out though, which other people may also not like, is really figuring out when you want to go and do a fate action, because you can't just like zone out everybody and worry about yourself and try to get your engine going and all that kind of stuff. You've got to pay attention. You've got to move to a fate spot and then throw something in that player's way. And I have seen in the few games that I've played, I think in 2 games that I've seen it, not every game, but where it's like, okay, Francesca's going to win, and then I know she's going to win. I know I'm like 2 turns away from winning just because I just, the board's saying, I know I'm 2 turns away and then I'm going to win. So I'm going to move to a spot to trigger fate, throw that in her way. That puts her a turn or 2 behind, and then I go ahead and win. So yeah, so it's just like that can kind of feel bad, I think, if you're like, ooh, I'm going to win. Billy over there, throw something in my way. I'm screwed. I can't win. I can't do anything about it. I could see a lot of whining and stuff about that. But for me, I think it's okay. And that's kind of part of the reason I would like to play this with 6 players, because this will kind of tie back into what is this game like. In a certain sense, it kind of feels like it's Cosmic Encounter, where now there's no negotiation per se in the game, but there's not saying you can't have that. And there's not saying that you can't have some table talk. And then if you have a large group of players, you've got all the asymmetry that is, very Cosmic Encounter thing. Everybody's doing something on their own. But these villains can kind of team up and say, well, man, they got super lucky with their draw. So if we hit them, then they can get smacked in the face and slow them down. And it's not like you're giving up your whole turn to do that. Like, well, I've got to give up my turn. I don't get to do anything. And so everybody else is going to do it. Well, it's not like that. Because if you move to a spot, you get to do the fate thing and you get to do other stuff. So it's not like you're throwing away your turn. And again, in the 5 and 6 player, to prevent being beat up on, you've got this token here. Once you get smacked with this, that prevents me from getting hit again. Now, this is a little bit of theory crafting because, like I said, I've only played it 2 and 3. So I really enjoy this game. I had a chance to play it with the family as well. And I was a little bit leery of that because, I'm going to say something weird. My family's kind of weird. Like, they will play lots of different games, but sometimes games don't stick. And it's kind of hard to explain because I'm getting into a strange area where, like, they like games like Steam and Bora Bora and whatever, Castles of Burgundy, sort of heavy games sometimes, but other times I'll throw a game at them and they're like, I don't get it. I don't understand this. And a lot of times games that have lots of card text and things like deck builders they don't like deck builders. Dominion is like way simpler than Steam, obviously, at least I think, but then like, I don't understand this deck building, And I'm not one that like will push out like, no, let's try this 5 more times. I'm like, no, whatever, you don't like it, we'll never play it again. So I've seen where there's a lot of like variable player powers and different card abilities and card interactions that were really like, ooh, but this actually worked out pretty well. And I think because this stuff that you're doing is very thematic to the character that you're playing. And then, like I said, when the heroes come out, they're like, oh, I recognize that character. That's okay. And so it actually worked pretty well. But I will say, because of the asymmetry, this might fall flat for some family gamer groups. And I've talked to some friends of mine that are, whatever, gamers, and they said that that happened. So that's why I was a little bit leery, like, my family didn't like it at all. There was just like too much going on, and I was trying to pay attention to all these people and teach them, and and oh no, you can't do that. You don't want to do that because your goal is this and all that. So because there's those kind of asymmetrical balls in the air, so it might be a little bit flat. But for me, I was like, oh great, so you guys liked it. I'll bring this back. And they're like, yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of different villains we can play. So I think this is great. I think it's a great game. And like I said, I want to play it with that big kind of, I feel kind of weird saying this, but like this big epic 6-player game of villains where everybody's talking trash, and you're kind of getting in the role of your villains and sort of tag teaming a player for a round and all that kind of stuff. Because even the way that you trigger the fate deck feels cool, because it allows you a way to interact with the player. It's not too take that-y. And you're not like a villain directly attacking them. You're sort of, through some manipulation or whatever, abstractly kind of getting those heroes in their way to go after the villain. So you're kind of like kicking off the story of the movie and stuff, because you are over here in your other kingdom or whatever, and you're trying to get your plot done. So you're kind of like sending these minions out through whatever means to get in their way, so you can be the one to kind of dominate the world or take over the world or whatever the villain thing is. So yeah, I really like this game. I think other than those couple of caveats, which I think you should be aware of, if you're going at this looking for like a deep strategy game, don't do that. But I think there's a lot to it, and I like the asymmetry, and I like just the ability to play through and dig through a lot of the characters. I played the 2 out of this. Who have I played in the base game? I know I played Prince John and Captain Hook. Yeah, that's it. I've only played the 2 out of this. I've watched other people play the others, but that doesn't count. So yeah, I'm ready and willing to dive in and check out all the other ones. I say for right now, my favorite is in the expansion here, and that's the Evil Queen. I like it because she doesn't have a lot of allies, and you've got this whole like potion point mechanic thing, and then you're trying to poison Snow White, and it felt like I was being a little bit sneakier than in some of the other villains and stuff. Anyway, I definitely recommend this, knowing that it may not work for all families because they take that and a lot of the things, but definitely I feel like this is a good family game. Anyway, so that is Villainous with Wicked to the Core expansion. Thanks.